Welcome to SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. I'm your host, Susie St. Angelo, and thank you for being here. Today's episode is called Lesser and Lighter Anxiety, a chat with Coach Mac. I will be talking to Mac Estelle, an anxiety and adulting coach who's on a mission to revolutionize how you think, feel, act, react, and interact with your anxiety. She's your go-to gal in all the therapeutic endeavors that haven't worked diddly squat in reducing your anxiety, and she can help you out. So this podcast is for you if you know you want to change something. Maybe it's your career, your health, or another aspect of your life, and you might wonder if this is the right age or stage in your life to make that change. And you don't know how to start. Or maybe you're that person who's caught in analysis paralysis. I understand. I used to be that same person. I know that by listening or watching this podcast, you might get one or two tips that can help you make those changes. And you can certainly reach out to me or any of my guests to move the needle forward. So, you can find this podcast on Spotify, YouTube, iHeart, Amazon, and Apple Podcasts. And remember to like, share, and subscribe. And now let's get into today's episode and meet my guest, Coach Mac. Hi, Coach Mac. How are you?
Hi, Susie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being on SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. I'm excited to have our conversation today. I enjoyed it when we initially met to talk about what you do, and I'm excited for other people to get to know you better as well. So I always ask my guests, talk a little bit about your background and what inspired you to get into this business.
Yeah, well, I am an anxiety coach, and first and foremost, and I am probably maybe I was about to say the only person in the world, but I'm sure it's me and a handful of others that are the only people that will get on a mic and come at you with full passion and joy to talk about anxiety, which might be a little off-putting for people because the topic of anxiety for so many, so often is this persistent, heavy, deep, dark, muddy and mucky thing and experience and topic. But I come in with a lot of sparkles and sunshine with this topic. And so I hope to add maybe some unique value to anyone that's listening to our conversation. But as any listener may accurately guess, no one becomes an anxiety coach without having a pretty thick portfolio of experiences with personal anxiety. And that of which I have experienced anxiety symptoms for as long as I have a conscious memory. But it wasn't until I got into my early 20s and, started entering into the young adult years where my anxiety symptoms, which, by the way, for all of our listeners and for you and I here, just like many other people, I didn't tag it as anxiety. I didn't identify all my symptoms as anxiety. I just knew I was perpetually uncomfortable for a lot of my life, right? And in the privacy of my own mind and heart and all that. So it wasn't until I really got into my young adult years where I started to be able to put words to it. But then right when I was able to identify it, it amped up like nothing else. I mean, my anxiety symptoms was like, think of maybe a calm, candle flicking and, in the living room to a full blown, California wildfire. I mean, the difference in magnitude and frequency and duration and intensity of my symptoms was just a different world. So, and panic is what knocked on my door. And that was new to me. So I, like many other, smart people, caring people that care about their health and their future. And really that's all. I'm saying that with a laugh because that's all of us humans. All of us are smart and intuitive and caring about our health and the health of others and our success and our possibility for life. And especially as a young adult, when you're looking forward and you're like, hey, I have the whole world ahead of me. I did what most others in my shoes would do. And I started to seek out professional help, started to kind of dabble in mental health services and fast forward through a variety of details. But it didn't take long for me to realize that there were some serious gaps. There were some systematic gaps There was in both the mental health industry, and I say people changing industries because that includes things like the coaching industry, of which I am a part of, and many other therapeutic modalities, providers, therapeutic settings, as well as pop culture and pop cultural trends towards wellness and health and vitality. And I started with, I mean, with years of observation and experience, I was able to really identify some key gaps and hiccups and hurdles and what was getting me as well as millions of others stuck and always working on their anxiety. So fast forward to today, and now I work with folks full time to really get clear on many aspects of their experience of anxiety and work to make anxiety. I call it the lesser and lighter anxiety.
Mhm. So, as I was listening to you, I have a ton of questions, but the first one I want to talk about is symptoms. What are the symptoms for anxiety, and what are the symptoms for panic attacks? And are they the same or are they different?
Yes, no, both, all. Yeah, so there's many, many symptoms of anxiety, and Susie, I know you also know some of this as well. I could list off a ton of different symptoms, but the well, yeah, let me start there. Common symptoms of anxiety can be, racing heart, excessive overthinking, extreme internal discomfort that seems to persist. It could be sensations of feeling um, um, trapped and unable to access resources, go places, do things. But, I kind of refrain from going into great depth about talking about all the symptoms because with many other psychological experiences can come those same exact symptoms, right? So I often actually find, interestingly enough, the symptoms of anxiety can sometimes be the least interesting part of the conversation of anxiety because there's only so many symptoms that the body can produce when it comes to illness or ailment or disturbance or dysregulation. There's nothing really fun and sexy that happens like, oh, I'm having anxiety and I grow a unicorn horn or something like super unique, right? I would love if that was the case. But with panic, though, panic is a step over when it comes to symptoms, and it does have something that's a bit unique, which is terror. Oftentimes, when people are experiencing panic attacks, they're actually experiencing high levels of sensations of terror. And I use that word very specifically because that's different than fear. You can have fear about failing your college exam next week. You can have fear that your boyfriend is might be breaking up with you, or something's going on the back end. Maybe there's some cheating happening. You could have fear that you might get food poisoning down the street from the restaurant that you read a bad review on, right? So fear can take many different forms, but with panic, those that are experiencing panic, and in particular panic attacks or perpetual panic waves, oh, terror. Terror is the biggest and most prominent symptom, and it is the fear that fear fears. It is sometimes also what I call the hell that hell, it's hell's version of hell. And when I talk with people about terror, there's just a quick note on this, and then I'll pause. But I really like to emphasize about the description of it being terror because most humans, thank God, most humans have a blessing to go their whole life and never experience psychological terror. Now, of course, there's been millions of people throughout human history with different global events and particular situations inside their home or outside of their home where, yes, they did experience very real terror. But for the most part, the majority of people get to go their whole life and not actually experience real terror. So this is where anxiety attacks and panic attacks can get so confused because with anxiety attacks can come a lot of discomfort, a lot of discomfort. And then people will tag that as a panic attack. But if you're not experiencing sensations of actual terror in your body, it is very, very, very likely you are having an anxiety attack or just extremely overstimulated and overwhelmed, and you are not actually having a panic attack.
And that's really good clarification. And as I've listened to you, I've kind of wondered. We talked initially before we came on, and about my personal experience, and I had them my senior year in college for basically a full year, and I thought I was literally going to die. I thought I was having a heart attack, and I I assumed I was having a panic attack, but it could have been just high anxiety due to the circumstances I was under at the moment. But I certainly had, sweats, and then my energy would crash afterwards, and then I'd be wiped out. I'd need to sleep and sleep off that that experience to get normal. And I never knew when it was coming on. And I don't know if that's true too, that most people don't know when one or the other is coming on. Is that true?
Yeah, both anxiety attacks and panic attacks can come on. Uh, the experience of it can be such that it comes on at random. Now, of course, anxiety attacks in and of themselves don't really come on at random, and neither do panic attacks. When we really unlayer the onion and we really kind of start to dig up some details about maybe how one's mind is processing data, amongst other environmental triggers and their functional medicine, health status, amongst other things, no, these things like panic attacks and anxiety attacks don't in actuality really come out of the blue. But oftentimes people describe it as such because with a simplistic overview, if you were just like an eagle's eye, right? Someone looking above you or in the room, there's a fly on the wall and they're watching you, it would appear as if it is really coming out of nowhere. And sometimes you, as the person that's experiencing the anxiety attack and panic attack, can really feel like it's coming out of nowhere, even swear, oh my gosh, this really came out of nowhere. But I do promise you, you being any of our listeners, that when you unpeel the layers, none of this stuff really ever just happens at random. But yes, it can absolutely feel like it.
Well, yeah, good point to make, and you think, oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting that, and here I am in a full blown attack in the bathroom or in my bedroom or whatever. But I had been told years ago that don't think that anxiety itself is bad. That
Yes.
a lot of smart people have anxiety, and that
Yes.
is. Have you heard that too?
It's not only have I heard it, I actually study under various doctors and professionals that call it the smart person's disease. Now, or just the smart person's disorder. Now, the term disease and disorder I'm using very lightly here, and I actually don't adopt that vernacular in my life for many reasons, and many other practitioners are moving away from that as well. So, for our listeners, please know that I'm using those terms, disorders and disease, very, very lightly here. But yes, it is often tagged as more of a smart person's problem. Let's say it like that: a smart person's problem. It is very often tagged as that.
Is that because we're overthinkers and we're over analyzing things and over processing, overstimulating?
So there's many things I can say with this. One thing I will say, because another thing I like to stay away from is over the term like overthinking, because so many people feel like they're overthinkers, right? And then what ends up happening is, well, oh, we can tag ourselves as overthinkers. Okay, well, if we tag ourselves as overthinkers, then that means we fit in a certain box and category, and then we're other than from the rest of society, and then it becomes. Anyway, I could go on and on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but I will say I really strongly feel that I don't think it's because people are inherently overthinkers, or maybe a certain category of the population, quote, the smart people, are overthinkers. But we as humans have a prefrontal cortex that is neurowired and in charge of and responsible for closing the loop. It likes the endings of the movies. It likes to know the information. It likes to go from point A to point B. It's in charge of planning. It's in charge of strategizing, thinking ahead, doing upstream thinking. Okay, if I have my test on Friday, okay, what do I need to what assignment do I need to have complete? Oh crap, I'm only going to have this amount of time. Oh wait, I have this event I decided to put on my schedule that's going to get in the way of studying. Okay, what am I going to? The list goes on and on, right? That's all the prefrontal cortex doing what it needs to do, which is really rather stunning and beautiful. What can happen to the human mind, and this goes for anyone, regardless of education level or background or anything like that, is that if the subconscious mind, which is kind of the older part of our brain, it's often called the primitive mind, or some people even like to call it the reptilian mind, that's in charge of other things that are equally as important and equally as beautiful. But when the communication between the two isn't as harmonized as it can be, that means one needs to be kind of doing more work to sub in, just like at your place of work. If you work at a restaurant and you have a coworker, a waitress, a host, a busboy, whatever, who doesn't get to come to work for the day, well, the whole team has to kind of step it up, right? So oftentimes there's kind of a data glitch in what's happening between how one part of the mind is processing data and how the other part of the mind's processing data. And when there's a glitch, that means someone needs to step it up. Well, who's going to step it up in figuring out what's going on? Well, the one that's responsible for figuring things out, and the one that's responsible for figuring things out is a prefrontal cortex. And lo and behold, what you soon have is, quote, what people like to call overthinking. But so see, this is why I don't love to ever term or coin or really say, "Oh yeah, I'm an overthinker." Although I think all day, every day, nonstop. Let me tell you. So I am the classic. I stare up at the ceiling and I think about every world problem, every solution, which cheese I'm going to buy at the grocery store tomorrow. I mean, I just think. Um, but we got to be careful about confusing overthinking with just natural healthy brain functionality and the relationship between them.
Yeah, well, yeah, it sounds like it's like the highway between the one and the other. Maybe there's a glitch there, and the one has to overcompensate for the other. Okay, so have you witnessed a client in a panic attack or an anxiety attack when you're working with them?
So far, anyone that I've worked with has not live in the moment been experiencing a panic attack. But let me tell you, I'm kind of excited for the day that it does happen. And that might sound so off putting, right? Like, why, as an anxiety coach, would I want someone to be in deep moments of suffering right in front of me? Well, there's a lot of really rich opportunity for coaching in the stickiest and most heightened of moments. When I say opportunity, I don't just mean opportunity for me as a coach. I actually really mean more opportunity for them as someone that's seeking help, because there's a lot of magic that can be done in that moment. So I'm actually kind of waiting for the day. I never want to trigger that upon someone, but when the day comes, let's just say I will not be shying away from that moment.
No, that's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. As I was saying, I think there's also a point of vulnerability when someone is in that experience and you're there to help and witness and to walk through and walk with that person. And so, speaking from experience, I have witnessed someone in a panic attack or anxiety attack, and that was a year ago November, and it was a time where I had had enough training through my coaching training to know about grounding and my own experience with seeing a panic attack and witnessing it, that I was able to help that person. And it was really pretty powerful to be there, to be able to help and to know they were safe around me and they had support, and they were able to be vulnerable around me. And that's what led me to continue on my education with breath work. And a lot of that, is trauma informed, and actually holding space for people who are having some moments, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional experiences, and maybe unblocking things that had been blocked for a long time. So I don't encourage witnessing it, but I'm glad I have witnessed one in person and was able to be there. I know it feels awfully isolating when you have one.
Yeah, and it can feel incredibly isolating, even if you had one person in the room with you, 10 people, five doctors, you
Yeah.
name it. It is such a, and oh my gosh, there was so much thunder that just happened outside unexpectedly. I hope that didn't come through the mic.
No, I
That
didn't
scared
hear
me.
it.
But with panic attacks in particular,
Mhm.
yes, with anxiety attacks, but with panic attacks in particular, most people, most of the time, it is such a lonely experience. And Susie, no matter how great you helped in that moment, which I'm so, for those that are listening, Susie and I are of course here on video, and I was smiling the whole time she was sharing that, because it's so exciting for me to hear, hey, for Susie to say, hey, I was in front of someone that I was actually having, whether it be an anxiety attack or panic attack or whatever, they were in deep distress, and I was able to help authentically and effectively and successfully ground them, because that's a different thing, right? Because a lot of people that are suffering, they kind of might fake it, if fake that they're getting better just because there's nothing else to do. But to authentically help someone really ground and get back into their breath is an amazing thing and is no small feat, especially if someone's in a panic attack. Yes, yeah. But it can be a really lonely experience. I mean, Susie, every time in the previous years that I had a, whether it be an anxiety attack, or a panic attack, it didn't matter if I was on the phone with my mother, who I'm very close to and have a great relationship with, or if I had a friend or acquaintance nearby. It didn't matter. It was so lonely because no one else I personally knew in my life had been experiencing panic and had any, real life experience with it. I didn't have any family members. I didn't have any friends, no peers, no coworkers, or at least not that I knew of. Right. So it kind of, for me, I never leaned much on people, like run into a room and say, I'm having a panic attack. I never did that, because for me, it was like, oh, well, what is that going to do? They have no idea, right? They have no idea what to do, how to help me. Now, people that are working with you, Susie, it's a different thing because you have skills and education to be a lot more helpful than many other people. But I'm just, reflecting back to my years of panic.
Yeah, I do, and I think the fact that we're on camera and being recorded and talking about mental health, and specifically talking about anxiety and panic attacks, I think is a beautiful thing. I'm really encouraged to know that we're talking more about mental health as a whole. And so, as a part of, I'm a more holistic health coach, body, mind, and spirit. And I truly believe that our health is not just diet and exercise. It's a lot of the factors around us that, we encompass. It's our home life. It's our joy. It's our career, our finances. It's everything that combines that. And when certain things are out of whack, that can cause our behavior, and maybe our eating does change, or our sleep changes, or some of our lifestyle issues are things that I can help with. And then, to the degree that they're having some panic attacks and anxiety attacks, whatever it may be, there are ways to help. There is coaching with Coach Mac there. And I'm curious to know are there ways to get help and to alleviate or eliminate panic and anxiety attacks without using medicine, without using, what are the techniques and what are the things that you can use to overcome them?
Oh my gosh, this is something I could talk for 5 hours about. So it is hard. I will admit it. This is always hard when I'm asked a similar kind of question to this, because it's there's so much I could say that could be very helpful for a listener that's at any stage of where they're at with their relationship with anxiety. Let me kind of start with some quick rapid fires, especially because this is really top of mind for me, as I have recently been diving into the world of Facebook support groups for anxiety, which is a new thing for me. I did not start doing that until literally a month ago, and this is February of 2025 at the time of this recording. So all during my deepest years of suffering with anxiety, I was so, completely off social media, etc. So anyway, now I show up to these support groups online a little bit every day to help answer people's questions from around the world and help provide appropriate guidance or insight or prompts for reflection here or there. And oh my gosh, the amount of questions about, okay, can this really go away? Can this go away with medicine, without medicine, yada, yada. It's the same type of questions on repeat. And it absolutely breaks my heart, Susie, every day. And even just this morning, it happened this morning, I pop onto these groups to give support, and I'm instantly met with multiple sensations at once. I'm met with heartbreak. I am met with frustration. I am met with inspiration. And I am met with a vigorous passion and fuel to help. And it's all happening at the same time. And one of the reasons is because there is a variety of ways that people in pop culture, and at least and here in the US, but this is such a globalized world now with the online space that, I really feel like this is kind of common language around the world now, where how we talk about anxiety is as if it's this illness that cannot be cured. I cannot tell you, Susie, how many times, I even just read it 3 times today, where people were showing up to support other people and reminding them that, hey, this is an illness and there is no cure. I would like to say, I will boldly and loudly say to anyone that is willing to listen to Susie and I right now that that is the furthest thing from the truth. That is very old, outdated rhetoric. There's reasons why that rhetoric got developed, like any other language patterns and culture. It doesn't just happen at random. It gets birthed through a series of circumstances and unfoldings in society, right? But it is extremely outdated language and it is beyond inaccurate. But people are so used to now are hearing it and adopting it that now people are showing up to support other people and they're regurgitating this language. And they're actually what they're doing is prescribing that anxiety is an illness. Mental health in and of itself is a illness versus something that we inherently experience as part of a psychological phenomena with being a human. Oh my gosh, Susie, I can go on and on, but yes. Okay. Let's get back grounded to your question. Yes, you can absolutely clear yourself of panic. And now what I mean by that, and not just panic, but excessive and persistent anxiety. Anxiety is a psychological phenomena and experience that is built into the neurowiring of our human brain. So therefore, it's not something and never was something to, quote, get rid of. It's not like expired milk in the fridge where really you can grab it, take it, and toss it in the trash can, and then you have truly gotten rid of it. It is something that is just, you're able to experience it if the right conditions are happening at any given moment, just like the rain. On a random Thursday evening, you walk outside to walk your dog and it's raining that day. It's a climatic experience that happens when the right conditions are set. Well, same goes for anxiety. And just like how the rain doesn't continue raining every day, neither does anxiety, right? So if the right conditions are placed. And so there are many things that can be done where you can create the conditions within your body and outside of your body to dramatically reduce the frequency, intensity, and duration of your anxiety, so much so that you are almost never really experiencing anxiety. That doesn't mean you won't ever experience it again, but where it becomes no big deal. It's not even a part of your life, really. You're not thinking about it every day, every second, every week. It's just like the rain that comes, once every 3 weeks or whatever it is. You're moving onward and upward. You're focusing on other things. That's when you know you're really cleared of anxiety. So I always like to make sure we're clear about the language, because when people use term, even I'm just using it, right? Like the term clear. Well, what does clear mean? So oftentimes I use the word clear with prospective clients or in my email newsletters or when I'm helping people. And I so often make sure that as I'm using those words, I am clear to them about what the word clear really means, so we can all start using the same language and understand, appropriate expectations.
I'm not shocked by people using outdated language, because that's what they know, and if they haven't done the extensive research and the work that you've been doing, they wouldn't know that. I would think, but I would think that you'd be in high demand, especially during a period where people have perceived that it's a high stress time in our life right now. There's a lot of change going on, some rapid fire things. And so I would assume people are on high alert right now.
Yeah. And, actually, Susie, speaking of high alert, I want to circle back to just making one other note about your question about, is this something that could be cleared without medicine? Well, full disclaimer and disclosure for any of our listeners, I am not a psychiatrist. I'm not a medical practitioner. Please always, take everything with a grain of salt, consult your handful of practitioners that you want to consult with. But I will say that something that is so often, and this is a gap in the system that I absolutely love talking to people about, is that it is so often, from my experience, both my personal experience as well as experience talking to hundreds and hundreds of people, is that it is so often not made clear enough the role that different psychiatric medications are intended and meant to do and perform for someone that is going to see a mental health practitioner that can prescribe. Normally in the United States, that's the psychiatrist. And if they are going to receive medication just solely for anxiety. Now, I'm not talking about people that are also needing certain psychiatric medications because they have a history of seizures and other stuff. Okay. We're not going down that convoluted route. I'm just talking about people that are looking to really reduce their anxiety. They're often feeling like, oh my gosh, I need help. I can't do this. I need some type of some aid. And they start to look towards psychiatric medicine. I will tell you that so many people on these, let's go back to these Facebook support groups that I've recently, dove into. Every day I wake up and all it is hundreds of people around the world that are freaking out and wanting answers about what is going on with their body because of psychiatric medication and what it's doing. I am by no means anti-psychiatric medication. There's roles and capacities and possibilities for all forms of therapeutic modalities and outlets, but I also will not sugarcoat and I will not stay away from saying boldly and loudly that there are many, 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 many unintended consequences that can happen when taking psychiatric medication for anxiety, both in the short term and in the long term. And so often, people are going on these medications, hoping, dreaming, thinking it will help, and it causes 10 times more anxiety and problems than they could have ever imagined or signed up for. So, it's to get to your question, Susie, it's not only possible to dramatically reduce the frequency, intensity, and duration of your anxiety without medicine, it is extra possible because what is happening on the reverse is medicine is so often for so many people, not everyone, but so often for so many people, it's actually creating way more hell than heaven.
Yes. So, if you don't mind me asking you a personal question, what did you ultimately do to uh, keep your attacks at bay? What techniques did you use, and are they techniques that you're using now to help others?
It's funny because I love the question. There's nothing wrong with the question. The question is grounded in pragmatic logic, like I'm with you. But it's so funny because this makes up most of my day with talking to people. Is people are always wanting techniques, people are always wanting tips. And with my own story, what brought me out of chronic persistent anxiety is just learning about what the hell anxiety really was. I mean, Susie, you would be shocked to find out how often people are not introduced what anxiety is. And by introduced, I mean from their medical practitioner they're going to, or any type of therapeutic provider. And I'm not just talking about traditional therapists, social workers, whatever. I'm talking about anyone. Your hypnotherapist, your acupuncturist, your the witch in the woods you go and visit. I mean, it doesn't matter. Anyone that you're going to for healing, okay? It's so shocking how often, number one, anxiety is never introduced. Number two, if it is introduced, it's introduced very briefly and in a way that does not actually speak to the whole brain of the person that is listening, the client, the patient, the participant. In other words, the person, suffering with the persistent anxiety. And so it kind of goes in one ear and out the other, and it doesn't really do much for them. I'm of the full belief that if you really understand what anxiety is, it should be doing something for you. That definition should be actually serving you. It's not just about education. A really darn good definition of something helps make things happen. It puts you into motion. It changes things because you're not just like, oh yeah, I know what anxiety is. It's, oh, oh, ah, like that should be the sensation. That when someone does that, I know their whole brain has suddenly got it. And Susie, the reason I'm kind of taking a moment to lay that out is because this was the case for me. And this is what I'm seeing on all these Facebook pages that has 80,000, 100,000 people in it that are just suffering. And every client that comes my way or that I do a consult with, it is the same thing over and over again. We have a epidemic of people that are not actually really clear about what the heck anxiety is, why it keeps occurring in their body, and what there is to really do about it. So we remain anxious. We remain anxious because we're anxious. Suddenly we're anxious about the anxiety because we don't know I mean, Susie, what if I said to you, run from the lion? And you look at me and say, well, what's the lion? And I say, Susie, just run from the lion. It's coming. And you're like, okay, but Mac, what is a lion? Like, what does it look like? Is it big? Is it short? Is it brown? Is it purple? We get nowhere. If you don't know what you're working, people say all the time, oh, I've been working on my anxiety for 10 years, or, oh, I've been I've been getting help for my anxiety for 15 years or five, whatever it is. And I will ask them if they understand what anxiety is. And it's crickets, silence. They can't say, there's almost nothing that they can say about it because that is how ineffectively anxiety has been introduced to people. So you asked me, how did I get myself out? Well, I started to really learn what the heck it is. And just that in and of itself practically healed me. And I feel I can laugh about it now because I was with panic. I was so sick, Susie. Like I was so sick. My world changed. I mean, anxiety sucks. Like, come on, you know it, I know it. We don't need to beat around the bush. Anyone that's listening that has experienced anxiety, no one's like, oh yeah, I love anxiety. It sucks. But when panic hits, oh my gosh. I mean, that is a suck on top of a suck on top of a suck. It's capital S suck. And so when panic finally knocked on my door, my mental health plummeted further than I ever thought, imaginable. I was in a deep hole for years and years. If someone would have, anyone, I don't even care who they are. I don't care what degrees they have. I don't care what background they have. I don't care what title they choose to call themselves or not call themselves. If I would have had anyone, but yes, it would have been nice the people I was paying for. If I would have had anyone say, hey, Mac, here's what panic actually is. Like, here is what is actually going on in your body. Susie, I feel so confident that would have eradicated instantly on the spot 70% of my suffering. Because when you really know what's going on, it's nearly impossible to continue to be anxious about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Once you know, you do better.
Oh, you do tremendously better. And once again, no, go ahead, Susie, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the thing is though, right, is because you might, there might be a little rebuttal. Well, Mac, like, let's just say there's a listener right now that's listening to our conversation and maybe they're like, well, Mac, I'm offended. I know what anxiety is and I haven't gotten any better. What the heck are you talking about? Well, once again, first of all, I'm having to speak very generically here, right? But if that is your experience, then it goes back to what we were saying a few minutes ago, which is that it's not about, do you just kind of know what anxiety is from a logical and educational, academic standpoint? It's, does your whole brain really know what's going on? Does your whole brain, not just your prefrontal cortex that can read and make decisions and logically listen to, a college professor or an anxiety coach on a podcast or your psychiatrist or whoever, is your whole brain on board? I'm going to take a solid guess it is not. Because if your whole brain is on board, it would stop sending you the same alarm signals it keeps sending you. So once you really understand what anxiety is and your whole brain gets it, your whole relationship starts to change with it pretty effortlessly. And it's magical.
Mm-hmm. And so when someone is going to their, let's say their primary physician, let's start with that, or their nurse practitioner, if they're in the functional health field, or maybe a naturopath, what should they ask? I mean, I guess I'm saying doctors these days, and this is a general statement, but they know, maybe they weren't educated on details of anxiety and panic, and they weren't educated maybe on nutrition, and they just gloss over that and just tell someone, hey, you need to go lose 10 pounds, but they don't tell them how to do it or what help they can find. They might say go to Weight Watchers or something like that. But for someone who's having these, maybe chest pains or this, rapid breathing or shallow breathing, and, they're starting to sweat and they're just really, going through these, maybe what should someone ask their primary physician?
Yeah, well, okay. So two things. I want to speak about the definition and understanding what anxiety is, and then we'll speak on the medicine piece because as you were speaking, an important thing just popped in my mind. But just ask. I mean, if you're whoever you're seeing, let's say yes, the primary care physician. You can say, hey, I feel like the symptom I'm having is this thing called anxiety that I keep hearing about, or I think it's anxiety, or even, yeah, I'm sure it's anxiety. Hey, doctor so and so, or hey, nurse practitioner so or so, or hey, witch in the woods so and so, can you please maybe give me a little bit of insight into your perspective and understanding and definition of anxiety? And just see what they say. But that's not really the interesting part, or I should say, that's not really the revolutionary part. I mean, most people know that if you don't understand something, you start to kind of ask, right? I mean, you might feel a little embarrassed or shy if you feel like you should know what anxiety is, but you don't. But once you get past that stage and you start asking, right? Yeah, or you go to Google, right? Whoever you're asking, you chat GPT or whatever it's called. I'm still new to that world, but the end all be all is that I want you to not just get a definition or a introduction to anxiety. I want you to ask yourself, did that serve me? And now that is a very different process. I want you to ask yourself, oh, did what that person just say, does it make sense to me logically? Boom, boom, boom. Okay, yep, we can check off some of those boxes. But wait, is that enough to serve me? Is that enough so that it becomes actionable? It's moving something in my brain and my body where something is shifting and I can move forward in a brand new light. Now, that's going to be a little bit of your logic at work. That's also going to be a bit of your intuition at work. And it's going to be, registering and getting grounded in how your body is feeling. I really feel, Susie, that so many people, they hear, there's always like this 2 or 3 sentence fight, flight, or freeze response, that's introduced, or like, oh, anxiety is this thing called a fight, flight, and freeze response, yada, 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 yada. Well, if a 2 to 3 sentence descriptor with, a fight, flight, or freeze response thrown in somewhere in those 2 to 3 sentences, if that would have done it for people, it would have already done it by now. That if that would have spoke to the whole of everyone's brain, we wouldn't be having millions and millions of people that are not knowing what the heck is going on in their body, what anxiety is. I mean, we wouldn't be where we're at today. So it's not working.
Yes, right, right. So someone's listening or watching us, and they're going, "Oh my gosh, I have this, and I need to I need to reach out to Coach Mac." What are you? I'm sure you do a initial call to find out what people are experiencing. And please don't let me put words into your mouth, but I would assume that people do that with me. They have a problem and they want a problem solved. So
Yeah, yeah. Consultations are my favorite. Yep, that's the first step if anyone wants to tiptoe into my world and explore how I can best serve you. Consultations are the way. I offer a free 45-minute consultation, and I get really excited when I see a consultation pop up because it's not just about, I run my consultations very differently. Well, I run my whole private practice very differently than most other therapeutic settings people have been in with, trying to get help with their anxiety. But I start from the get-go in the consultation. I do not, I pretty much do not allow people to give me their family history. And we go through this whole checklist and this, and this. I really start to get to the heart of the matter very quick, already within the 45-minute consult. And I use that time, pretty much we just hop right into coaching. Um, because if there's not everyone that comes my way, I'm going to be the best fit for them because of many reasons, right? You know this too, Susie. This is how it goes with coaching. People have different resource availabilities, schedules, things they're trying to balance. So if I'm having someone that is trusting me enough to gift me 45 minutes of their time, right? I look at it as a two-way gift. They're coming into my world and I'm also stepping into their world. And that is such a privilege. That is such a blessing. And so I really look at it as, how can I give them as much value in the 45 minutes? Because maybe, just maybe, there is something I could say to them or some small shift I can make that can dramatically alter the direction they're going, even if that direction is not with giving services for me. Because when we're talking about psychiatry and when we're talking about psychological health and when we have suicide rates that are out the wazoo and when we have people that are suffering and the deepest and darkest of black holes. And I was there too during a certain season of my life when I was completely panic ridden. And I thought I was really losing my mind and had to hide it from everyone, including my loving parents, my loving family. The suffering that is happening behind closed doors is profound. So yes, Susie, I definitely do consultations and I get the most, I get more excited for a consultation than when someone signs up for my services half the time. Cause I it can be such a powerful connection
Of
moment.
course. And you find out a lot about that client, and then you can tailor make a program for them, I assume.
Yeah, so everyone that comes into my world, there's different options for services, but overall, the greater theme is that we start with a really kind of intensive deep dive into getting to the meat of the matter of what are the gaps in your process so far. Because Susie, once again, let me say, most people that are coming into my world are not people that are like, oh, I recently think I've started experiencing some anxiety a month ago, and I've never experienced this before. I mean, I might get someone like that in the future, but oh my gosh, that's going to be rare. Most people that are coming my way, they've seen 10 doctors, they've seen 5 therapists, they've already hired a coach before. They've done the 10 medicines, they've read the books, they've been there, done that. They've tried all the things and they're tired of all the trying. Right? Those are the people that are stepping into my world the most. And so because I know the dance that they're dancing, I know that there's a gap. They're stuck on what I call the perpetual starting line, where they're still always working on their anxiety. They're still always managing their anxiety. They're still always trying to quote overcome their anxiety. That's another term I absolutely don't like to use, but they're running a marathon while still starting the marathon. And so I know that there is serious opportunity for shifting where the order of operations, behind the scenes of what is going on to really, quote, "work on the anxiety," and that's what we start with. So when I start doing coaching with people, it's trying to uncover and peel back the layers as soon as possible to see, okay, where can we press the restart button and let's actually get you past the starting line so you can really start to experience what it's like to have authentic and sustained reduction in your anxiety symptoms. Because if you've just been standing on a starting line for years and years, you haven't actually gotten to experience what it's like to run the race. And I'm a lifelong runner. I used to do mountain and trail racing, so I always use running analogies. But I mean, it sucks if you're looking around you and you see all these other runners start to go off the starting line. The person with the gun has, pulled the gun, the race has started. And what if just everyone around you, it just looks like they're doing it? Like they're doing life and they're doing okay. And even other people with anxiety somehow are doing better than you are. I mean, it's a sucky feeling. You just feel like you're stuck on a starting line and everyone else is ahead of you. And normally when that's happening, it's because there's some little shifts. And oftentimes it doesn't have to be a big shift. Normally it's pretty small what needs to be done.
Absolutely. Good point to make. And I wonder if you have maybe a success story or two that you'd like to share with us. And if not, I understand, but in general terms, maybe.
Yeah. Well, you know what? This one's a fun one that comes to mind just recently because it was a conversation I was having 2 weeks ago. It was actually during a consult. But I just get so jazzed when a moment like this happens because it goes back to some of the things we hit on today in this conversation. And that's that, I was actually, no, this was past a consult. This was in my first session with this client, but uh, we spent the 45 minutes restarting a conversation about, okay, what has historically been your perception of this thing we call anxiety? How has it been introduced to you? How do you define it? What comes top of mind? Give me this. I always like to say to people, give me the sloppiest of sloppiest. Because, when you're asked that question, sometimes it can feel like a pop quiz and you're going to get the answer wrong. So I always want people to know, like, no. I want you to give me the most sloppy definition. I want you to get it partially wrong. Just don't worry about being right. Just what comes up naturally. How are you understanding this thing called anxiety? And then I love asking them, oh, well, is that serving you? And of course, there's always crickets afterwards because I haven't had one person come my way where they're like, oh, yeah, my understanding has really served me super well in getting me to where I want to go. So then from there, I use, there's kind of a handful of different stories and analogies and symbolism tools I can pull out of my back pocket, but I craft a personalized and curated story on the spot that I think within just minutes, it can be challenging, but within just minutes of knowing someone, I try to register how might this best, what particular story with particular symbolisms and particular analogies might best reach more of the person's brain so that when I am teaching them or reintroducing to them what this thing called anxiety is, it goes deeper, it goes further, it goes wider, it expands. And that can all be done within a 20-minute conversation. That can all be done within a 40-minute conversation. That can sometimes be done in a 10-minute conversation. And this woman just a few weeks ago, she looked at me after, speaking for 30 minutes and she goes, "My gosh, I've been in therapy biweekly for 3 years." And that's just with her current practitioner. This isn't her only, practitioner or other professional that she sought help for or with. And she says, "I specifically went to this practitioner for help with my anxiety, and I have never once been introduced to it anywhere at the level that you just introduced to it. And that took 20 minutes." And she goes, "This changes everything for me." And Susie, I could have just cried. It's so hard because sometimes I have to really try not to cry when I'm on it because I'm such an empath. And I'm like, no, 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 people don't need that on the calls that I'm on. But I cry not because, oh, I made this massive impact. I mean, yes, there's that. But it's not about me. It's more about like I could cry because why is this not being done? It's not like my skill to perform that and get that accomplished and get that done for her. I always like to say get that done because if we're working on something, that's what, once again, people all the time with anxiety is like, "Oh, I've been working on my anxiety for a decade. Oh, I've had anxiety my whole life. I keep working on it." Well, if you're working on it, it's not getting done. Just like a homework assignment, right? So I like to say, what can I get done for you? What can we get done together? And what I got done for her took 30 minutes of my time. All I had to do was just uptick my caliber of craft. That's it. I mean, and so I don't think it takes anywhere near what people think it takes to make radical shifts in how we're understanding, approaching, and then playing with and dancing with this thing called anxiety. I just think it takes better conversations, Susie. I think it takes better conversations, and I think the world is so thirsty for that, even if that's not the words they're using, which is why on these Facebook groups that I've recently jumped onto, what I see people for is they're thirsty for pills. They're thirsty for pills. They just want a pill. They just want a pill. They just want a pill. But I think that they want the pill because they don't know that there's another option is to just be having better conversations. And if they've already seen a doctor, they've already maybe seen a therapist or two, or maybe they've even grabbed a book. They've even read a book or two about anxiety, and that wasn't enough for them. Then they think, "Oh, well, I mean, the only other option must be to try the pill." And so they become so thirsty for something else. And we've bypassed so much opportunity. And once again, the craft and caliber of how we are choosing to show up and talk about this thing called anxiety. And I have found that most of the time, people are creating a lot more confusion around anxiety than clarity.
Yeah, good point. Well, I want to ask you, and I ask every guest this, what is your SOS for someone listening to this? What's one or two things that they can do right now to maybe move the needle or have that conversation about anxiety? What's one or two things that you could suggest to them?
Uh, well, I think because there's so many different kinds of folks and different seasons of their relationship with anxiety that might be listening to this. I think I'll do a little sharing, an invitation, I'll call it. I'll call it an invitation for consideration that is 100% applicable to anyone of any age, of any background, of any education and experience, and for anyone that is anywhere along their quote journey of bettering the relationship with anxiety is take stock of and take note of how often you are not anxious. Now, here's the deal. A lot of people that tiptoe into my world are like, "I'm anxious all the time. It's nonstop. I wake up and I'm anxious. I go to bed and I'm anxious. I'm sitting on the toilet and I'm anxious. I'm in the shower and I'm anxious. I'm making love with my partner and I'm anxious. I'm eating food and I'm anxious." I mean, it's nonstop and persistent. It's prolific. And trust me, I was there too. I was there and I truly do know what it feels like to be like, "Oh no, I never get a break. I never get a break." But the truth is normally there is a very, very, very small moment somewhere along your day. It could even just be for 2 whole seconds where your body is not experiencing anxiety. Start to take note of that. Try to find those moments think of it like a little treasure, you know, because our brain, the way it's wired, neurowired, and we don't have time to get into all this right now, but it will give attention to what you give attention to. So if you start to notice, no matter how small, once again, I do not care if it's just 1 second in your whole 24 hours that you are not anxious. If you start to observe that 1 second and then observe it with some serious compassion and celebration, you will be shocked at how far that can take you and experiencing lesser and lighter anxiety over time and more of all the other goodness that we've really been craving.
I love that. I love that tip a lot.
And Susie, I will say to you, only for your show by giving this tip and trick, because normally, when I'm on different, having different conversations with folks, people always want little tips or tricks, right? And it makes sense, right? What's a quick little thing a listener can do? What's a this or this? But for so many reasons, most of the time, I really avoid answering the question in the way that the host is wanting, because actually it can cause a lot more harm to people when it comes to their anxiety. And I see it every day. People just have their hand out for the tip jar because they want quick relief. We all want that. I wanted that. But oftentimes with people, this goes back to what we're talking about. People don't need tips and tricks. They need better conversations. And so, but for you, Susie, I knew your show was SOS, and I was thinking about it today. I'm like, oh, Susie's going to ask me. And I was like, I'm going to give her a tip just because we can't not. It's the title of the show, SOS.
SOS for your life, emergency wisdom for everyday life. So is there anything else that you want to mention that we didn't talk about today?
Oh, Susie, I could talk to you for so long. I could talk to you till you're like, oh, Mac, I never want to hear the word anxiety again. I'll be like, good, okay, I've done my job. My brain goes to so many places with that. So let me revert the question and ask you, is there anything that you want to talk about that we haven't hit on yet, or any other lingering spicy questions? I always invite people to ask me the spicy ones in case there's kind of something that's been brewing.
I don't have spicy questions with this topic. So I just know that I think it's so important that we are having this dialogue and opening up the conversation, and that there's someone there that is willing to work with people. And I guess my comment to you is, what do you do as an empath to take care of yourself when you've been working with someone? This has to be, you can cry, you can get, happy for people who are uncovering things that help them with their anxiety. What do you do?
Susie, I'm actually really excited you're asking this question, because I actually was just thinking about this in the back of my mind a minute ago when I made that comment, because my relationship with this exact topic of how do you as an empath show up and do dense, gritty, intensive, very interpersonal work with people, and especially people that are having psychological distress and oftentimes psychological distress that you have a personal history with, right? So sometimes when people are talking, it's like, oh, my bad memories come up, or my woulda, shoulda, couldas, or my, oh, if I could press a redo button, my own personal stuff, of course, comes up in my mind. I'm human too, right? So I am so grateful that someone that I'm currently studying under was saying during a session that I was learning from, he was saying, so many healers and practitioners are they identify as empaths. And by the way, Susie, I am the empath of the empath of the empath. I cannot stress it to you enough. I've always said my whole life, I could see a pumpkin on the ground and burst into tears. Like nothing. I am so in tune with the energies of the world. I just can't stress it enough. So I am a capital E empath. And so when this doctor that I'm training under, when he said that, my ears perked up, because to be honest, I was a little bit offended. I'm like, well, what do you mean? My empathic skills help, right? They help bridge a connection between me and the person I'm working with. But he made a good point that I never thought of before until this year, Susie. So this is still brand new for me. He said, for the things that are the most immediate, that you want to make the most immediate impact, why would you want to be empathic in that moment? When you go to get heart surgery, do you want your heart surgeon to be feeling sensations and be so sensory attuned to your pain? No, the chances are is you actually need the doctor to be the exact opposite. You don't need them to be cold and disconnected, but you need them to not. You need their sensory experience to be really focused on effectively cutting open the heart, right? And I could give many other examples, but I've really pondered and chewed on that quite a bit this last year, and instantly it made it easy. It just made it easier to show up and serve people because I realized, oh, I can still be an empath. I can still have whatever naturally comes up for me. But when I am on camera, when I am directly helping a client, I don't have to shut it off or mute it. It's not about like, oh, let me mute a version of myself or let me squash a part of my spiritual and energetic gifts. And instead, it's saying, actually, I'm not going to choose empathic gifts right now because that is not the most effective. That is not the thing that the person in front of me most needs. And I think so often people can end up in various therapeutic settings with, and once again, I'm saying therapeutic settings generally, seeing a variety of practitioners, healers, and the practitioners and healers might also be empaths or want to connect and say, oh, I'm so sorry, or oh, I feel that, or oh, I had that same experience. But to be honest, yes, it feels good to be seen, heard, or understood, but often that's not enough to get someone to where they want to go. So a lot of people will have very, empathetic practitioners that they're seeing and talking about their problems with, and then they're wondering why they haven't gotten anywhere. Yeah, so I've pondered this topic about how to be an effective empath, and sometimes that means your empathic skills and your empathic ways don't it's not the most effective for this current circumstance or moment. And that actually has made me an even more empowered empath. Yeah, so I just want to share all that. I got really jazzed with that question because this has been something I've really thought about a lot this last year.
So I know during my breath work training and as I've done it, I can definitely feel the energy of another person. I can sense the room. I can walk into a room and know what the energy is. And sometimes it's a room that I need to walk right out of, or I need to know that I can't be in it too terribly long. So when I'm working with someone who I know is really feeling it, I have to do something afterwards to kind of break that energy and to recharge myself. So that might mean going for a walk or washing my hands or having a snack or, turning on the TV for a few minutes before I jump back into a new situation. Do you do anything like that around here?
I've gotten up and oh my gosh, it's so funny because if anyone listens to this and then they later on, at any given point work with me, this is going to be a funny image in their mind. But sometimes I actually do shut off the camera when I'm done. I kind of do a more somatic approach where I get up and I just start shaking my hands. I start shaking I literally shake off the energy and help myself transition. But I will also say, so that's one thing. Actually, I've been recently trying to implement that more because sometimes I'll kind of sit and I'll be having this like empathy discomfort of, oh, okay, I kind of bookshelved my empathicness for a moment to be more effective in where I needed to go. Made that conscious and gifted choice. It wasn't because, once again, someone told me that would be a good idea. I've really realized how, I'm very much in line with this new train of thought. So after doing that, I still, it's almost like the empathic me like starts to crawl off the bookshelf and then starts to get back in my body. And it's like, now that you're off camera, right, you can now feel all these things. So yeah, I definitely get up, I shake it off. Sometimes I go immediately and get on my tennis shoes and go for a run. Once again, that's an accessible tool for me because I have such a long history with it. So it's not as grueling and daunting of a ordeal, unlike what other people might experience with getting on their running shoes to go run for 30 minutes. But I will say this, Susie, and I'm so happy about this. I only do this half the time. Half of the time so far, I've been shocked. I've been so shocked how quick after having that kind of new train of thought of, oh, I can actually be a more empowered empath by not always using my empathic ways, which before younger me would have never agreed with that. Younger me would have actually been a bit offended that I'm even saying that. But I really, yeah, once I shifted that train of thought, now I can truly be on a call with someone and I don't need to shake anything off. It's amazing. It's like I don't need half the time because I didn't. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm still
Yeah,
new
very
to this, so
interesting.
I'll give you an update in some months and see how it's
Yeah,
going.
absolutely. Well, where can people find you?
Yeah. So anyone that wants to connect, you can find me at actionableanxiety.com. You can just Google Coach Mac, Mac spelled MAK, and you'll find me somewhere on the interweb. I have a new YouTube, women's only Facebook support group. I have a blog on Substack, etc. So you'll find me. Just Actionable Anxiety, Coach Mac, MAK.
Sounds great. Well, you know what? It has been a wonderful conversation with you. I'm so happy that you came on to SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. I think it's really important we have this conversation and to know that you're out there in the world helping people with anxiety and panic, and you know firsthand from your own experience what that looks like. I think people would feel more trusting and accepting working with someone who knows what that's like. So thank you for being on, and I do hope our paths cross again.
Oh, I'll just ensure it does. I've loved connecting with you, Susie. So thank you for allowing me to tiptoe into your world.
Absolutely. Well, friends, sadly, that's all the time we have today. Thank you for listening or watching SOS for Your Life, Emergency Wisdom for Everyday Life. And thank you, Coach Mac, for being my guest today. This episode was just a conversation with someone who has experienced anxiety personally. She's done the homework, she's researched, she's educated, and she can certainly empathize and understand if you're one suffering from anxiety and or panic attacks. And so I hope that you get a lot out of this podcast conversation. And please know that help is on the way. A quick reminder on how you can support this podcast. You can like, share, and subscribe, send me a review or a question. Your question may be answered on an upcoming episode. Follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. If you'd like to be added to my weekly email newsletter, please send me your email address. I'm happy to add you. And reach out if you have questions or you're interested in any coaching or breath work. I'm happy to help. Until next time, take care and see you soon.